Okay.
Tickets. Garen, we'll catch you up with the ship, but the day after that, it's not a sort of call and tender port.
We are recording,
Oh.
just so you know. We want to
Everyone's very interested
I was gonna say, I feel like I actually do want to hear what that's.
in vacation. You know, and
Oh, my gosh.
and of course.
Having said that,
Sorry.
Okay.
let's hear more about Elizabeth Cruz hereafter.
Maybe it's best over a separate happy hour.
Sounds like it might be an unhappy hour.
There you go.
It went uphill. from
Okay, good,
there.
good, good.
It did. It certainly did.
Have a quorum or even?
No.
I don't think we're going to have a quorum, so I'm starting anyway, and I'm sorry about that. But, so welcome to the July meeting of C2E2. I'm Cindy Lewin, Chair. This is an open public meeting. Everybody's welcome. The meeting's being recorded. We'll go around with introductions and then people can offer a short public comment. And we do have a public commenter here with slides and everything. But after public comment, that's a general rule, only commissioners can speak. Then I'm going to go. So Rob, this is why we don't have a quorum. Rob Sandoli is on vacation, but I want to announce that he has just taken a big new job. He is the director of the Fairfax County's Office of Environmental and Energy Coordination, and he started on Monday. Yes, last
Monday
Monday,
today?
started last
Oh,
Monday.
I was like,
They've been there a week. So he has pointed out to me already that Fairfax County has 400 square miles, unlike Arlington, which has, they're struggling. So he has a lot of, with our 26 square miles, there's a lot of room to play. They have 1.2 million people. He still loves us and he's not here, not because of his new job, but because he's on vacation. Anyway, that's very exciting. I also wanted to announce that Rena, you may want to say something about this, but Rena Lara, our wonderful person, Climate Policy Office, is leaving or has that.
Today was her last day.
Oh.
She also got a great new job, which is wonderful for her, but sad for Jen and the rest of us.
Yep.
So you guys have all been getting messages all day. So Kevin Vincent cannot attend. Lisa's on vacation. Alex is at the Kensington Elder Care SPRC meeting tonight, which they always schedule the SPRC meetings on the same night. So she's covering that meeting. Lily's stuck on traffic at 995, as you saw. Joe is traveling, trying to call in also. Helen is out and maybe trying to call in. And Malcolm just called me to say he's just got sick at 6:45. So I feel confident that there's David. Since this is an in-person meeting, it's people calling in, like Joe. Hey, Joe. Hey, Lily. Great job. I didn't see you both there. And David. But I don't think we will have a quorum because for in-person meetings, we have to have 8 people in the room. 8 commissioners. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. So we will figure it out as we go. So with that, any questions about that? With that, then let's go around with introductions. And Jenna, let's start with you and go around in the room and then online.
Yep, Jenna Peabody, DES Comms.
Henry Perlow, Commissioner.
Doug Snowenboss, Commissioner.
Elizabeth Whitney, Commissioner.
Scott Rideau, Commissioner.
Steve Lewin, Commissioner.
Jason Papakazma, DES, Sustainability and Environment Management.
Steve Burke, County Staff on the DES Air Team.
Jennifer Peretti, Climate Policy Office.
And Bodine from Nye Park. Public comment.
And I'm just Stephen D'Alessio. I'm just a
Oh, great.
guy.
Okay, David Friedman, Commissioner, Joe Trebek, Commissioner, Lily, Commissioner. Rich, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. Rich Dooley, Climate Policy Office.
Right, and then we have somebody with a phone number that starts with 480. Can you introduce yourself?
This is Jamie Kern. I couldn't get the Teams to work, so I'm calling in just to listen and no comment. Thanks.
Thanks, Jamie. Pleasure. All right, with that, let us welcome Ann Bodine, our public commenter, kindly provided slides, and you all got your slides earlier today. Ann is commenting on the low residential study. I just want to mention that the county staff has asked for time on our September agenda to present on the low residential study. And Lisa Marcellus is our rep to the low residential study. And some vacation day, but she did get Ann's slides and noted them. And with that, Ann, when you're ready, you have 3 minutes. Start the timer.
Okay, hi, I'm Ann Bodine. I'm also representing tonight Arlingtonians for Our Sustainable Future. I spoke to this commission in November of 2025 and had a lot of concerns, 33 slides. The concern at that time was that county had decided instead of controlling the lot coverage standards in the zoning code that say maximum building footprint or maximum lot coverage, they were going to take a stormwater approach and impose a new impervious area limit, but supposedly after study. Next slide. So they've come in now on July 15th, they briefed LRPC and there's new updates on the idea. So just because I've got to go quickly, if you look at the R6, you can see impervious area median is 35% on the bottom of the row. And the county's proposals in lower, middle, upper are 40, 45, and 50. There's a lot to get into. There's asterisks here, but yeah, on the face of it, increasing impervious areas is contrary to the whole purpose of this. Now, the average shows older homes, so that's part of it, but we're not sure how this is going to affect the real problem, which is the home footprint. Next slide. This is very concerning to me, and particularly Arlington is moving towards form-based code. What that means is developers need to color inside the lines when they have specific limits, 48% maximum lot coverage in R6. What the county's proposing to do with stormwater is make it a little bit more flexible for developers. So if they want to eliminate sidewalks or walkways on the property and maximize the building, if they get rid of the zoning coverage, they could potentially increase the footprint of the building. So I see this going in the wrong direction. One of their options, number B, was to replace the zoning lot coverage. Next slide. Crazy idea 3. These are my terms, and I realize they're maybe a little too extreme, but I'm very upset at what I saw on July 15th. This is very complicated. This is the issue of undersized lots. So in R6, you can't develop unless the lot is 6,000 square feet, or if the property's been savaged by a storm. This is opening up development on those undersized lots. And in R6, one of the proposals would be to set just a square footage limit of 3,000 square feet in R6 that you could have an impervious surface area. Now, there's only about 1,000 or less, maybe 500 lots. But there are some lots in R6 that are 3,000 square feet. So that would be 100% impervious area, which I think, again, at the 5th grade level makes you scratch your head. How can we be opening that up? We're also opening up the lots themselves that now are not 100% developable. So we're going in the wrong direction, in other words. Next slide. Okay, I'm just going to point out that the 4th and 5th points, one of the ideas of this stormwater review was to adjust yard and setback requirements. I'm really a tree person to allow for increased tree conservation and planting. So that made me happy. And I've testified at FNRC, but in July now, the county's saying we're not going to look at that. And the quote is because it could further disrupt existing development patterns. Well, I think that was the point, that we're supposed to be disrupting development. And I hope that you'll be looking at this before the staff comes to brief you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. We have more people online than you see before you.
Okay, thanks.
I really appreciate it. Okay, well, our guest speakers have asked if we could possibly change the order of things so they don't have to be staying a long day meeting. And I said that we would start with legislative priorities because we have to pass that. And to Henry's good point, we're going to pass that with our limited quorum. And I think the way we will have to do it is because we do have a quorum if you count the people online. Under the county's rules, we don't count the people online. But I think we can, if people online, everybody approves this.
They just have to long video.
We can just, that's an interesting idea. Or Oh, yeah, everybody has to be on video to count you. You cannot turn your cameras off. That's another. So sorry, David, Joe, and whoever else I can't see up there. Lily, and I know you guys are driving, so just don't.
More important than your thing. On a legislative priority.
Leave that aside. We can say that we had a majority count. You know, we'll just drop a footnote saying that it was approved by majority. We did technical. So I think we should go ahead with our legislative priorities letter, and then we will go to our guest speakers. So just as a reminder, we talked about our legislative priorities at the last meeting, and there was recommendation. We talked about a decent number of them, and there was a recommendation. You know, the consensus would be more formal than we were, but I heard we should put the building code first. It was not first when we were talking. I've added some technical, you know, it doesn't sound that bad that we've only adopted the 2021 IECC code in Virginia when we're only up to 2024. But the reason it's bad is because we changed it when we adopted it and made it worse or less restrictive or whatever. I mean, that was not an accident by Virginia. So we want to update it to 2024 as 2024 IECC code exists. We got some comments online that said that they liked it, which was good, I guess. And then, so that's the first one, is updating building codes. In the past, we've asked for stretch codes that are beyond the IECC, and there's just been a sense based on the fact that we're a Dillonville state and based on the fact that I never got any traction on those requests, that was too big of a reach, and we wanted to have something that we thought might be feasible. So hence, that's why this is the ask, but this IECC code would be a big improvement. So I don't feel uncomfortable that we're not asking for the moon. I ask for the moon when we have the stars. So that's recommendation number 1, and I'll turn over to Elizabeth to talk about recommendation number 2. With just a yes.
Make a quick
Yes.
comment.
Yes.
So nationally, no jurisdiction stays right at pace with the updated code. So typically 3 to 6 years behind in approval and adoption, and sometimes longer. The amendment part potentially is worrisome if we're kind of backtracking from that level of code. And so I think it's the right thing to ask for no amendments, but maybe the meeting point is some amendments that actually push the
Like from where we are.
Yeah.
From 2021.
right.
That's an interesting thought.
That might take a lot more lifting than what this can do, but we might be able to at least make some general recommendations.
You're saying if they're not willing to go along with 2024?
No, I'm just saying that rather than just asking for no amendments, to suggest amendments that actually might push that forward, that push certain requirements.
You can add a sentence that says, just make it better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure I'm not
Get
sure.
rid of the
I understand.
amendments for
I don't
2021.
understand.
So the problem with the 2021 version is not that it's super old, but that it was amended at the time to be less stringent.
Amended
So-
by Virginia?
Yes.
Yeah.
So our request, our priority would be to just move to the 2024 version without amendments.
Right.
But what Scott's suggesting is that as a fallback, I think we could
Well,
just ask that
not
they
amendments,
undo
but-
those
That
amendments
actually
to the
push
2020.
past the code minimums some places.
Wouldn't 2024 be better?
It should be,
21 with
but
amendment?
that's not guaranteed.
But I would just say keep it simple. And
Yeah,
this
I mean,
is simple, clean, obvious, and just the fact that we're on 2021 and here we are in 2026, that's enough right there. It's like, well, that's not right. So let's go to 2024. That's obvious. I mean, that's simple. I wouldn't make it more complicated.
We can, I like the idea of keeping the letter simple, but I also like the idea of being more practical. So as the conversation happens in the legislature, we'll have the opportunity to do that.
Sure.
If the conversation happens in the legislature. Also, we could meet with the legislative person.
Yeah.
Also, we do happen to have, who's Brian Esty, and we do happen to have Jen Fiorenti here
Yeah.
as well.
Well, and the reason that it's often delayed like that is because states that do tend to look at specific amendments need to take a year or three to actually comb through it and decide what they're going to do and which lobbyist is going to get what thing changed down, et cetera. So again, it's not unusual that that's kind of the course of things from a code approval standpoint.
It's online that Rhode Island or code in 2024.
Yeah.
That was considered massively revolutionary.
It was, yeah.
They also have a size.
Yeah.
There's, I think there's
There's
more in
a
the county.
Little Mahoney.
Hey, leave Rhode Island alone. Sorry, grew up there. I would, I like the concept of sticking with 2024. And while I agree that there's value in being flexible, I would argue that in a document like this, it is better to state the strong, clear, simple perspective and use other channels to be flexible, because I think the degree to which we include the flexibility here, it signals to folks who want to do less that they already have room to do less from our perspective.
Oh, David, I'm sorry to see you're sick. Say that out loud.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we don't want her to read.
Lily, if you're driving, please turn off your camera.
We
60 is going pretty fast for a 5 right there.
The reversal
Yeah.
section.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Then the second legislative, thank you for that. The second legislative priority, last year we also did BPP, but there's been a lot of action in BPP with the Dominion pilot and so on. I'll turn it over to Elizabeth to mention that, to discuss that. But then just quickly, the third one is benchmarking, which was our first one last year. So Elizabeth, over to you, and thank you for your work on this.
Sure. So we have prioritized creation of or acceleration of some kind of virtual power plant in the region, whether it's Arlington, Northern Virginia, et cetera. Dominion has moved forward with their filing for their pilot program, which is a strong effort, but not really fully what we need to get there. But our legislative recommendations build on what the legislature had done previously, which is to require the pilot. And this past legislative session, they passed a number of bills around grid utilization and storage targets, et cetera. But since that time, Rewiring America has come out with a set of policy recommendations that I think are incredibly strong, that would put states really on the path to being able to create a meaningful DER regime. And so this recommendation basically pulls out some of those individual recommendations. I think there were 6 policy recommendations, and we have kind of a slightly different set. What I will highlight for the group without, reading it cover to cover is or really my addition here is the local clean energy cooperatives. That doesn't appear in the Rewiring America document, but it's something that I think would be a really important way to facilitate all of this, because so much of it is not really in the utility's best interests. So to have some kind of consumer-owned governance layer that sits in between the utility and customers can take on a lot of these functions that don't really make sense for the utility to do with its whole heart in it. And if a third-party private entity does it, then all the customers are sort of locked in, and it's not really the type of marketplace that should be quite that competitive. So that's my contribution to the sort of overall regime, but it's mostly taken from the Rewiring America set of recommendations. So, and so much of it is stuff we've said before. So strong compensation for the customers who own those assets, equity, which sort of centers low and moderate income households so that they can participate, and directing data centers to invest in these distributed energy resources directly, which some jurisdictions are starting to do, some private entities are starting to facilitate. So happy to answer any questions. I could see harmonizing it 100% with the Rewiring America, but I think this is our opportunity to, advocate for what we think makes sense and our ideas, and what makes sense for Virginia. So I took a little bit of liberty in adding in the direction I think the legislature should go with respect to the co-op. So happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Elizabeth on this section of the letter? I think it looks great. So then the third one is almost exactly what we put in last year as our number one priority. Yeah, would you like to say?
Oh, no, I benchmarking is that, what gets measured gets managed. So
Yeah.
if we can benchmark our buildings, then we have access to the information and can target solutions accordingly. So
Like, I would consider adding one other thing in the description where it says benchmarking helps building owners and managers understand. So if this would be public, if the performance would be public, it's actually a great way to allow commercial tenants to actually use energy efficiency as a criteria for site selection, which is a market driver encouraging developers to do better. So I would try to put that in there somehow.
So like,
It'd be up to the locality whether they can publish this or not.
but we were gonna ask for it to at least be public to the government, do like our climate tab. But I think we want it public altogether.
the commercial.
So I'm sorry, I said benchmarking if made public, and I just put that as a making sure. So
And we
allows
can do
commercial.
that to citizens.
Yeah.
Allows commercial tenants to include energy efficiency as a selection criteria for
For site selection,
site, yeah.
sites,
So we,
energy efficiency as a site selection.
we want the legislation to give localities an option, or do we
To
want
make it-
the legislation just to say it's public?
It should,
If the
it should just be
locality-
public.
It's still gonna be
But
an
it'll be
option
fun.
whether to require benchmarking for the locality, right? So then the extra option is whether the locality decides to make that public or not.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
Is there any reason for the locality not to make it public?
So people don't
Yeah,
want it,
performance that
yeah,
don't, basically.
yeah, people don't want it to be shown.
30%.
Yeah.
This where it says if made public, you would have this, and let's see if we can get anywhere with this. If we're similar to the first, the code. Let's see if we can get any discussion at all, and then we'll be able to lobby on these kinds of issues. So, and I want to mention, let's look at Kevin's comment. So is there a better, so he's saying buildings with below average energy efficiency save twice as much. The idea there was the average building saved 2.4% each year over each year and during 3 years. But if you started, and you were very low, you saved twice as much. So, like 5% each year. So I think, so the point is that for the lower buildings, this made a bigger difference. So I'm not sure that it was nonsensical exactly, but clearly we must be a way to say it more clearly because.
I mean, I agree with Kevin. I don't think that this sentence supports our argument.
Okay.
It's sort of like,
The idea that it's not just 2.4%, it's for some buildings, a lot more.
It's kind of addressing the low hanging fruit of the poorest performing buildings being the place to start
Yeah,
to get the most gain out of it.
right.
But
Maybe you could word it differently.
Yeah, it would have to be worded differently.
or even change approximately to an average of 2%, 2.4% each year during a 3-year study period. And some buildings
More.
significantly more than
Okay.
that average.
That could work.
Yeah, I mean, won't this effectively be able to highlight even larger opportunities? Is that basically what we're saying.
Basically saying the poorest performers have the most.
So we want to put in, village smart buildings achieved an annual average energy savings. So we should put the word average in the sentence above that one. The village smart buildings achieved an annual average energy savings. Right?
Yeah.
And then building below average,
It's just average.
some buildings, and just say and some buildings. And then at the end of that sentence, 2% each year during a 3-year study period, and some buildings significantly more, and then delete the last item.
The reference.
I think we have to we need to keep the reference, and some buildings significantly more. Okay,
Can we also delete approximately? I just think approximately when you have like that level of granularity. Just I
Well
don't
said.
An average annual.
There's nothing approximate about 2.4%.
and then there's a footnote,
Plus or minus.
and that footnote, there's the site, but then there's the footnote, there's a site for that study. But then there's a footnote about that Kevin talked about last month, about the ACC2 regulation that Virginia had passed, and then federal government has blocked it.
So is this looks like a fourth recommendation.
The fourth recommendation, but the way we left it was, we didn't think it should make our top 3 because it's not, right now it's tied up in litigation. And I did look on the internet, the internet says the federal government is going to win on this preemption argument. And this isn't going to happen but that this would be a way to maybe add some pressure. Kevin, of course, has read all the briefs and says that even though California is not likely to win, they have some very serious arguments. Anyway, that was sort of the compromise we reached last month, is that it wouldn't be one of our top 3 because even if Virginia does it, it will have no impact right now because it's tied up in litigation. They would mention it. You may remember last year we added an appendix and just listed every idea we had. So I thought getting it down to one extra idea was pretty, but I'm willing to.
That's what everybody's footnote.
I'm willing to abide by the group, but you're right. It is a fourth recommendation.
Personally, I feel like it doesn't belong in a footnote since it is so substantive and
You want to have it as
completely separate from, like, not connected at all to
the
what it
top 3.
refers back to.
Yeah.
I'm
I
personally not
also think,
adding it as a fourth recommendation, but I do think we wouldn't have to work very hard to convince the General Assembly to do that if the
It's a
litigation
Goes well.
situation like resolved in a way that made it possible.
So thank you for the opportunity to provide our thoughts on our top 3 legislative priorities for the next legislative session. That's where the footnote is.
Okay.
Oh, and by the way, here's a fourth.
Like these.
I would argue for including it as a fourth. I mean, I love, on one level, great, top 3, though. I think there's 2 reasons to include a fourth. One, there's nothing magic about the number 3. And I would argue everything else is kind of buildings and power oriented. And it does kind of stick out that we don't have a clear transportation recommendation, given how large of a footprint transportation still is and how much the state could be doing in the absence of federal leadership. And I totally get the practical limitations. But I do think we would be missing out on the opportunity to send the signal of how important transportation is, despite the barriers that are out there.
Was there an advantage to not having an appendix like we did last year with maybe another 3?
I just don't think anybody paid any attention to the
Probably.
appendix.
Yeah.
You know, the board asked for the top 3. That's why I think 20. I mean, we've been doing like 40 before that. So last year we got it down to 20. This year getting it down to 4, I think is good. I do think that David makes a good point, and Rob sent an email to me and copied maybe a couple people saying it would be great to have one because they're so building in energy. It would be great to have one on transportation. So he wasn't thinking about this footnote, but David's right. This footnote does sort of. So I'm inclined to leave it in. They can always ignore it.
I think going 1 over the limit, given that we're down from 20 plus to 4, probably is appropriate. Because otherwise next year, they're just gonna ask us for 1.
looked at the FNRC recs today, and their whole thing was about this long. For those on the phone, I'm showing about 6 inches of, and just said, number one was trees, number two was trees, number three was trees. They are the Forestry and Resources Commission, but they were very concise.
At least
so,
it's consistent.
they had different, each one was different things about trees. Trees.
So Cindy, if you want to leave it as a footnote, perhaps we could acknowledge like this was a close alternative,
I threw that in there. I know Kevin took it out of my original draft, but I think I might have put something like this as.
Can you show the
Go
footnote?
down to the footnote. I think I said, this is the reason this recommendation is not in our top 3. It is,
Yeah.
oh, I see,
Yeah.
it currently blocking states, which is why this recommendation is not in our top 3.
Okay.
That,
I have a completely separate comment.
okay.
This typeface is teeny tiny. Can we make it at least 12 point, if not?
Oh, the footnote?
No, the whole thing is like 10 point, right? Can we please go 12?
Okay, so 12 for
Jesus.
the thing.
The new glasses aren't helping.
You may need binoculars.
But I'm thinking of the members of our board.
Okay. Okay. Well, of course, they read on the computer, I
I
think.
believe our county
Okay, so 12.
manager wears glasses too.
Well-
Can I just also ask one other question? I'm not suggesting a change. I'm seeking to understand. Recommendation 3 focuses solely on commercial buildings. Have we ever considered multifamily benchmarking as well and public availability of that as a tool to help renters? And honestly, to put public pressure on them to do better.
I believe, and I learned this only 2 years ago, when people use the term commercial, they're referring to multifamily residential.
And I
Well, as office.
wouldn't want to,
Office retail.
You know,
I wouldn't want to sweep in like a duplex owned by one of the families that resides there. I don't think that's
Agreed.
fair to them.
Right, I see Joe nodding as well.
Okay, so Virginia's definition of commercial includes large multifamily. Okay, as long as that's the case, great.
Industry generally does.
Great.
tax purposes.
Okay, well, in the interest of time and given our guest speakers and visitors, can I have a motion to approve this letter?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, including those online?
I
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Looks like the motion. All right, with that, let's turn it over to Jason.
All right.
Oh, and Ally, sorry.
Yes, I'm here along for the ride here. No, Steve is gonna present and I'll be online as well, and then happy to have a conversation afterwards. So I'll turn over to Steve and we'll get into our action fund proposals.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason, and thanks all for letting us join the agenda relatively late and appreciate that. And hopefully folks saw the slides from that we sent out around it again Friday. So same slide deck, we're going to run through those, but really on the next slide is our overview. And so we're going to start with the board guidance on the climate action fund. That was from the PAGO budget process. Then we're going to go on into a overview of the process on how we identified priorities and sort of how we sort of built the funnel, went through the funnel, defined the evaluation criteria, ended up on the short list of proposed programs through that process. Then how we had created an evaluation rubric and sort of had 6 criteria that we applied the short list against that ultimately landed onto the CAF proposals. And so wanting to walk through sort of the process piece as well as sort of the outcome piece today. So
Right, and I just want to mention that we have, Rob was working on these and Rob was going to present on this. So we got this late breaking offer for you guys to present, which is good because Rob's on vacation, but we have been meeting and talking and exchanging emails and ideas.
yes, that's
And
yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Rob and Cindy have both been very generous and sort of share sort of their thoughts and sort of pieces on that. And there's a couple places where we note sort of inputs from like some of the valuation criteria and some of the projects that are like C2E2 and that sort of proposals, and that's from what Rob presented.
Right, and one more background piece, you guys may remember that the county board is their budget, the budget guide.
Yeah.
It said, you know, when you're you're talking about climate action fund expenditures, please check in with C2E2. It's very nice that you guys have been great about doing that. And we're trying not to slow things down with our only once a month meetings.
Yeah, so yeah, no, appreciate that. And
Meeting
then-
in August, if you're supposed to be back to this
Right.
and
county
then-
manager at the end of the summer, so.
Yep, we're hoping to get to the to the county manager and the board in September. So kind of a quick timeline. So jumping to the next slide. So this was the budget guidance that we referenced from, and this was from the PAYGO budget. And so this was, you know, there's $1.5 million in allocated funds, community facing programs, reduce carbon emissions and promote energy affordability. So you'll see those directly in the criteria evaluation. And so also a discussion of alternatives that we're bringing forward, and then also, you know, providing technical and education for residential and commercial properties, and then also with the focus on lowering energy costs for low and moderate income households. So we really try to follow this, and hopefully that's reflected in the evaluation criteria process as well as the programs themselves. So jumping to the next slide. And so this was really sort of the top of the funnel, what we looked at when we were evaluating the programs. And so a couple different buckets of program ideas. And so really the largest and biggest one was the community energy plan and the carbon roadmap strategies, both years 1 through 5 and then 3 through 5, really looking at those strategies that are listed, identified, and sort of where are their opportunities there. Also community needs. So as I mentioned with the C2E2 ideas, that's really the ideas that Rob shared through that. And, you know, and sort of fully caveated, those were his ideas, examples. And so fully understand that's not comprehensive by any means. And then also community engagement findings. And so through the GBIP process, as well as the home energy hub outreach process, really, you know, trying to sort of capture what we heard for those programs. And then lastly, we did a scan of neighboring jurisdictions and looked at what our sort of peers are doing in Northern Virginia and what could be a bonus. Moving down. And so this really gave us what's called sort of our universe of sort of past, ongoing, and future programs. So there are about 88 total strategies that we looked at through these different documents. And so moving down to the next part of the process, from that sort of top of the funnel piece, we really had 3 main filtering pieces. And so this was looking for programs or projects. Some of the CEP goals were a study or an assessment or an outreach. And so we filtered those out to really look at sort of what's a program, what's a project. We also looked at what was not yet completed or there's future phases. Some of the things like the e-bike, for example, was do a pilot and then from that, you know, transition to a full program. And so really looking at where those opportunities of stuff that we haven't started or could accelerate. And then lastly, the bit was that it wasn't funded or partially funded. You know, we also have the Air General Fund and our PAYGO projects and CIP. So looking at where there were opportunities sort of outside of that, like, so that was another filter where we tried to get down from that sort of 88 to something a little bit more manageable shortlist. And so from there, we ended up on our short list. And then when we had our short list, it was about 8 projects. We then applied 6 evaluation criteria on that. And so I'll dive into each of these and how we defined these and sort of rank these in future slides. But really looking at these sort of pieces, trying to have it comprehensive enough to where it got to implementation items, carbon reduction items, and then meeting community needs, and then the low and moderate income piece. And so that's what we tried to sort of really look through the lens and sort of really apply these sort of items in a very in a qualitative manner. And so from there, that's where we ended up on our CAF proposal, which is widowed down again from the short list. And so that is the 30,000 foot sort of process overview. I'm going to dive into the short list, the CAF proposals and some stuff. I just wanted to give folks sort of the landscape and sort of process piece before we dive into the details.
And just interrupt, that was and go ahead, Scott, but that was one of the things that we asked for at a couple of meetings. back, we were like, criteria, let's have a process and criteria.
Just to understand, you benchmarked neighboring counties, but did not include DC. Is that legislative issues? Is that other jurisdictional?
That was largely, we obviously want to look to programs where there are, different authorities, different pieces, but we really wanted to keep it to like Northern Virginia, where it's like with the lens that those are programs that other folks have stood up, have going on, and we could, implement over the 2 years. So
And under Virginia.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that was really the thought.
Did part of that include cooperation on like programs where force multiplier might be have good impact if you joining up with Alexandria or Fairfax to do something together that hits the region in a better way?
We're always mindful where there are opportunities where it's more of like a regional approach, or or this is something that it would be better on a regional level. So we're always in conversations with that and did have that lens of where it's
Nature doesn't understand our boundary lines.
No,
that's true. Exactly. Yep. So this is our short list, and I'll just breeze through these pretty quickly and have more details on these. And so the top one was the e-bike voucher program. So I think folks are familiar with that, or hopefully familiar with that, with the point of sale discounts, and then also prioritizing the low and moderate residents, which we were able to do in the pilot program. And then also the last one is sort of the source of the idea, whether carbon roadmap strategy or sort of other place where we sort of landed on that. The existing buildings pilot, this and more details, but really looking at technical support, energy audits, and the potential for financial incentives, particularly for affordable housing, for energy upgrades in the commercial and multifamily building sector. Carbon roadmap, the G2G grant, which I think folks may remember when we sort of were the EPA grant that we were well on the way of implementation, and then the EPA canceled that program. So a lot of the sort of constructs from that program we're planning to design into this existing buildings pilot. Residential energy assessments, we're looking at discounted energy assessments and energy assessments as part of the home energy hub, again, with the focus on low and moderate income, and sort of looking at means testing those and sort of what that may look like, and sort of more policy that design piece. Next is the residential energy efficiency and electrification incentive. And so this, again, potential for rebates or direct discounts with the focus on LMI, and a lot of questions around means testing, sort of what that could look like. But that's sort of another element, and sort of being part of the home energy hub as another offering as we look to sort of scale that program beyond sort of the energy coaching and resources that we currently have. Plug-in solar was another piece, and so there was some strategies in the carbon roadmap, but then sort of with legislation that's also been an opportunity. We included EV technical assistance with potentially financial incentives for multifamily buildings to install EVs, and then the last one, sort of coordinating with the Climate Policy Office and looking for the climate leaders online portal hub. And so this was, the short list after taking those, and then from these, jumping over to the next slide, we applied each of these and had this set of criteria. And so I'll just talk to these at a pretty high level, but essentially had a 1, 2, or 3 for each of these 6 criterias. And so again, aligning to county board guidance and aligning to factors with implementation timeline, and then we tried, layer in for each and sort of how they stacked up on each of these elements, from carbon reduction impact to community benefits, promoting affordability and low and moderate income, and then also a lot of implementation elements. So looking at what we could leverage current work streams or foundational work that's been completed, the ability to implement on a 2-year time horizon, and then also level of effort to achieve participation goals. Sort of what level of effort are we anticipating from that as sort of a consideration to look at how that could impact the achieving the program goals. So from taking the previous short list, applying these criteria, this, on the next slide is where we ended up, where each has a ranking. The coloring's a little bit off in there, but essentially at the end, from 16 to 12 is is where these landed. And so this is, how the programs related to each other on the criteria, and on the different elements. From there, we, on the next slide has, some really, trying to translate the rubric into the program proposals. And so this is, I think the first element, bullet is really trying to take an aggressive approach and really trying to see what can we do with the remaining CAF balance of $1.5 million over the 2-year of programs. And so really trying to back into that to really be aggressive, and really get programs established and in the community. We realize there's uncertainty with uptake. And so so on the next slide, you'll see through the presentation, some of the program designs have a budget range where we're thinking of if a program takes off more than we anticipated or is a little bit slower, to have that ability to adjust, and have that flexibility. We're also prioritizing program implementation, and so you'll see that in the phasing. We have a Gantt chart as well as a relative budget for this, and you'll sort of see the programs that scored a little bit higher have those higher budget elements. And then lastly, just continue to evaluate all of the internal policy pieces for program design, but also what's happening in the utility space with utility programming, the Virginia Department of Energy programs that have been in design, RGGI programs, and like the utility VPP programs, and how the county programs relate to all of these and support and amplify those programs. So really trying to sort of look at programs that can fit into the entire sort of ecosystem within this sort of energy and climate programming space. So jumping to the next slide. And so this is the short list that we came up with, the relative budget range, and then the anticipated launch. And so it's sort of speaking in quarters for launch date, and then like I noted, the budget range to really have that flexibility. You'll see that the midpoint is the $1.5 million sort of remaining balance, and so looking at if there is opportunity to, if programs sort of are more aggressive or there's more sort of a launch needed to have that ability. And then also sort of phasing with like plug-in solar, for example, as we know that there's regulation development that's happening and those elements too that, that we're going to need to sort of land before we design a program to help support these, help these elements. And then noting that, that we're not looking to exceed the budget, but just having that flexibility and where ranges could land from the proposals. I'll jump to the next slide. And so this is looking at timelines and sort of the implementation for these, and sort of the lead implementation team, as well as the timing and elements where there's still sort of state or program development that needs to happen, where planning can occur, and then when we would anticipate launch. And so we're trying to really be thoughtful about the implementation timelines and how these could interact together as we look to roll out these programs over the next 2 years. And then jumping down to the next slide, the next several slides are just more, a little bit more information on each of the programs. And so the existing building pilot, as I mentioned, will provide technical support, benchmarking, energy audits.
Take a pause and see if there are questions based on the.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great kind of piece.
Ask that question to get certainty.
Sure. But I'm sorry, I had a quick sidebar, but I was curious, the 1.5 million in the bank to spend over the next 2 years, is that something that will be renewed after that period of time? Considered for renewal, and we have to.
It's a one-shot deal.
One shot.
It was a one-shot $3 million deal, of which 1.5 has been spent. Yeah, that doesn't mean we won't ask, but there's no guarantee.
Okay.
Right.
No guarantee. And in looking at this, I think our direction was take the 2 years and see if you can spend as much as possible. Sure. Because that, not only are you doing more, but I think as far as promoting the thought of should we allocate more to it,
So it
all
would
fits
be
together.
really important to have strong metrics on the return on those investments. To say at the end of the program, hey, we spent this money and this is what we did
Yeah.
with it. Here's all the places that it improved. The things that we were aimed at improving. Can we do it again? Okay, is that part of this plan for you guys to do that?
Create metrics.
The metrics and
Yeah, I think we don't,
quantifying, okay.
we know we don't have it in sort of fleshed out now, but I'm imagining almost like a mini utility filing where you have those particular metrics and like for the e-bike program, for example, like we have some like evaluation work that we did with sort of follow-up surveys using an NREL tool. And so trying to sort of show, show those elements and sort of the, the sort of the benefits and sort of those evaluation elements. So yeah.
So you'll start when we launch into the planning stages of any one of those will include setting a goal, metric goal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Whether it's participation goals or energy, depending on sort of what the specific program is.
I see a question from David and then Lily. So David, go ahead.
Thank you. And thank you for presenting this. It's really clear you all, worked hard, tried to put a lot of thought into this and are balancing a lot of different factors. One of the factors that I loved that you saw, and actually if you could go back to the slide that talked about the programs and the LMI features of them, it was, I think, one of the matrices of the programs. I think it's really, really great that you created, I think it's maybe a few back from that, that you, one before that. No, one more, sorry. Yeah, sorry, that one that had LMI, I missed it before. I love the focus on LMI and all of this. And two comments on that. One, sorry?
Thank you.
Low and moderate income.
Yeah, sorry, yes, low and moderate income. Two comments on that. One, if I saw on the e-bike one correctly, it seemed like that's being treated differently than the others when it comes to LMI. It looked like, yeah, it's prioritizing LMI here, but in the others, for example, for residential efficiency and electrification, it looks like it's only for LMI. And I would strongly encourage e-bikes as well to only be for LMI. And if you're having uptake issues, then that to me either indicates the incentives aren't enough for lower income folks, or we should shift the money elsewhere. But I'd feel uncomfortable with that money going to people who aren't in the LMI range. And I would also honestly argue for the money only to go to LMI and for it to be prioritized to the L side of the LMI. And there's two reasons for that. One, I think you get a much bigger equity impact for that. Two, when you look at median income corrected for cost of living, we still live in an area where it's pretty high. So 80% of median income is still pretty high, and that's the upper end of the moderate. So I would strongly encourage prioritizing the low part of that. And then if you don't get sufficient uptake, going to the median, but not giving anyone above the median incentives within this, unless maybe there's disability or other factors involved. And I think it would have a bigger impact as a result. But again, thank you for doing all of this. It's really, really great work.
Lily, I'm going to ask you, I just have a follow-up question on the e-bikes, which is, all the metrics that we're using, are we seeing that people are riding their e-bikes instead of taking cars, or are they riding their e-bikes instead of riding their bikes? I mean, are we really?
Yeah, and then Allie, I'm not sure if you have that, if you have the statistics. We're working on sort of a mini evaluation report to share and post to the website, but was it around 60% of?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. We had lots of feedback forms and like questionnaires that people filled out at regular intervals, and we saw around, yeah, I don't have the precise number, but around 60% of people said they primarily replaced driving alone with riding their e-bike. So that's definitely a really encouraging result.
Great.
And well, go ahead and do your follow-up. I just want to echo
If you're on
something
this
David
topic,
said.
otherwise
Yeah.
I'm going to Lily.
I was just gonna say, I think it's really important that, we build in the means testing to all of these programs, because especially ones where somebody, like an individual, receives a financial benefit. It's gonna be really important, if someone comes along and wants to criticize these programs and it looks like a giveaway, I mean, that really undermines everything that we're trying to do. And everybody benefits when the community reduces carbon. So, it really should be baked into absolutely everything you guys do. And I know you know that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that we've had a lot of conversations about means testing, how to, for different programs, and we really want to be thoughtful.
Doug, are you on this?
So I'm gonna be the contrarian here, not convinced that LMI or low income or any of this is crucial to what we should be trying to do here. If it's rich people who are doing the carbon emissions, then we need to direct the incentives at the people who are doing the carbon emissions and not the poor people who aren't doing the carbon emissions. So.
No, I think
I would just quickly say, one, that they don't need the money isn't going to be what necessarily tips them, but also we know a lot of low income people are driving cars, and often they're driving older cars. They can't upgrade them. Older cars are less efficient cars. So I do think that the data will support a bigger bang for the buck. Sorry to just jump in, but I do think the data supports this, as well as just the equity and moral impacts.
Thank you, David. And thank you, Doug and Elizabeth. All right, Lily, we get to you, and if you're driving, be careful.
No worries, Cindy. Thank you so much. I mean, I can express my excitement to see the plug-in solar in the list. I think this is a great initiative. It is going to start like as a pilot, but I think it meets every single of the objectives that we're trying to hit, which is reduce carbon, have a lens on equity because it's directed to people that can really lower their bill by plugging in, and also for renters. So people who don't have the possibility of having equity on a household and cannot have a rooftop to install solar, well, they can help save the planet and save some dollars with these solutions. So I am so excited, and I just wanted to say thank you for listening to us. I also wanted to ask, and I know that there was mention of flexibility in how these programs are going to be folded down. I was going to ask about the timing for the regulation development, and if you could please explain what sort of regulation development are you referring to? That would be helpful. And the reason why is because I was looking at this to see how fast could it be implemented. And my understanding is that the expectation is that the final technical ruling that is going to go to the governor's desk is expected by late October, early November. And that is kind of the last piece for the legislation that the piece of legislation that authorizes the use of these plug-in solar systems in Virginia. So if you could kind of let me know what other pieces of legislation or regulation are you waiting on, that would be extremely helpful. And if you don't have it handy right now, just send us an email. I'm really interested and invested in this program, and so I want to be a companion to you and a helper with my research powers. So please let me know. Thank you.
Yeah, and absolutely, and thanks for that. And I think that we're looking at sort of like what that, what it means for sort of like electricity code, and then also having certified systems. So I think those are the two high level pieces, but we're working to sort of monitor that and and sort of see all of the pieces, you know, those elements that need to fall in place for, you know, for this to really take off the ground and have those systems that are available on the market and then the process for installations. And so we're certainly monitoring that and share the excitement and think it is a really just great opportunity.
Henry,
And really quickly, sorry, because I know we've gone a lot on this topic, but is there still sort of room for more ideas for programs? Or is this sort of?
So we try to be comprehensive. If there's something that it's, we certainly, we'll take more sort of thoughts and feedback, but trying to balance sort of the, trying to get this put together and sort of, through the approval processes. But if there's stuff over the next week or so that.
Yeah.
sort of,
you could do an email like back.
That sounds good. I just wasn't sure if it was like already sort of.
You say over the next week or so, so staff trying to get their final recommendations on paper submitted in the next month.
Yeah, I think so.
Kind of your timeline.
Yeah, because we want to get to the board, as soon as we can, and we're not exactly sure what that process is. It could be 2x2s, it could be manager's report, at a board meeting, but we want to just keep it. Yeah.
Did you find that this amount of work was too much for $1.5 million? You've done a very comprehensive.
You mean the work, the planning work?
Yeah,
It's
it's
a
a
lot.
lot for $1.5
It's a lot,
million.
yeah. Yeah, I think yes, on one level, but I also think it's valuable to go through this conversation, the rubric, right?
Yes, as you have budget money, given it stuff.
Yeah. I think so.
And I think one thing that we were trying to be very thoughtful of is thinking of how to have sort of like programs that are a little bit deeper too. And so like the existing buildings pilot, like we're trying to sort of go from like all the way from like just education and support through, hopefully a pilot incentive for affordable housing. Is we're trying to have programs that are modular that can kind of like sequentially build on them from just support to benchmarking to an energy audit to like connecting with resources. And so I think that was one piece with sort of the design is we're trying to have programs that work together and kind of and provide a little bit more of that sort of as much support as we can with the timeline and budget there, but and not having like a dozen sort of disparate programs that each have their contracting and sort of items that they did. So that was sort of the balance that we ended on for them.
Would you say that contributed to the decision to do these 8 as opposed to like 7 or 9? Like there was kind of a cutoff where like these 8 sort of hung together, or was it just they're a big break between the scores between that 12 on the lowest score of the top 8 and maybe the 9th was down to single digits? Or
there was the break, and then there was also a fair amount that were sort of filtered, that were filtered out through the through the process to get to the short list, and some of those were like like we are planning to do like a lot of right-of-way EV charging through our payroll process, and general fund is going to support some of those entities.
Okay.
And so it's like we already have that sort of largely spoken to in that piece, and so I think that filtering process was a piece, and then also when the scores shook out, there were those sort of like scores that sort of all had similar pieces or similar.
excellent.
Yeah.
I got a zillion more questions, but can we talk about specific of the 8? Or can we talk?
Do you want to go through those the slides? I think you asked specific questions. I'm not sure we have time to go through the detail of the 8 projects. But if you have a question about one.
Can we flip through the slides real quick?
Yeah, so we can, I can roll through these. And so this is the existing building pilot. And so this is technical support, energy benchmarking, energy audits, and then piloting one, probably one like affordable housing project with funding and sort of direct incentives, and looking again, pairing with means testing, utility programs, the Virginia DOE programs, RGGI programs. So it's really, we're having those programs sort of paid first, and then sort of reserving county funds from there. So this is sort of one of the I think this is the largest budget one, as well as sort of.
We talked about this one a lot during the green building incentive. When this decision was not to make it part of that, but we were very high on this.
And I think this was, like through through the GBIP process for existing buildings, plus the G2G grant, we're still trying to do this, and then also linked to C-Base too. So again, kind of bring those elements together. Talked about for a while, started and was, I think that with e-bikes at sort of the top of the so the next slide. This is the e-bike voucher program. So we mentioned this, prioritizing the low and moderate income as we talked about, and then we were anticipating, you know, sort of 2 rounds of that again to sort of have that sort of flow. For things.
So you did this before, and it has an LMI component. When you did it before, there was some federal money, as I recall. Are you expecting more federal money if you do a second round, or is this going to be totally
Just from
the
the
money?
Yeah, this is CAP. So essentially transitioning what we learned from the EECBG process with federal money to now have it sort of funded through the.
And you don't think you saturated the market, so to speak, with the prior program?
We had about 10 times the applications for budget. So we feel like.
And you've got a ton of lessons learned here and ways that you would do it without those strings attached that can make it even more impactful, right?
Yeah, yep. And then I think one big, particularly for the LMI component is that we were working with Eco Action and the Arlington Foundation. They actually funded a maintenance program. And so folks who got the enhanced voucher now have 2 years of maintenance that's paid for. And so I think, and that's the only, I'm not aware of any other sort of programs in the country that offer that sort of like piece.
Right.
And also we're looking at opportunities to help track data and sort of like a year and 2 years in, like, how is this? And so I think that this was an example of a program where we learned a lot, can apply a lot, and then also leverage outside.
Have you spoken to folks at Phoenix Bikes about this program? Very much. Okay.
Yep, we coordinated with them and
Okay, great.
maintenance piece and then just do general program design and they help outreach. So
Fantastic.
The flutter of
All right.
all right.
Sorry.
And so this is the residential energy assessment pilot. And so this is where we're looking at the providing support for energy audits in
Got it.
residential homes. Again, prioritizing low and moderate income, thinking about, you know, means testing for that program as well. And this is also another component of the home energy hub. So again, having that sort of program that has multiple offerings for folks. Next slide is this is taking a step further for efficiency and electrification incentives. Again, looking at where they're prioritizing low and moderate income. And I think, again, you know, means testing, I think, is something that we always are going to be really thoughtful of and need to sort of sharpen our pencil on. But this is, I think, one where we'll really need to sort of do additional research, but also pair with other program offerings and then what those incentives could be in means testing process.
I'd be interested to see too, like what specific upgrades you're looking at. I assume this is where our smart thermostats priority goes.
Yep. If it's like you can't get the utility program, you can't, like, this is.
So, yeah, I'm not seeing exactly how is the money going to be rebates or direct discounts on this?
Yep, on equipment, and so.
Smart thermostat.
Thermostats?
Yeah, like those thermostats or like
Heat pumps.
HVAC, HVAC, heat pump equipment. And so very much looking at sort of, you know, like what equipment, how it aligns with these programs, but in designing this.
And it's not a Dominion incentive where you get $10.
I know.
It's gonna be like real money, right?
Starbucks gift card.
So, with that, and that's the more sort of fine tuning work that that we're going to do with this for exactly which equipment, what level, what's the means testing process, but know that this is something that's on the radar.
If you go to the county and say, here's 6 programs and the board said, yes, go with all 6. Do you have enough staff to implement all 5 or 6 of these things at once?
I mean, it's a lot. I'm not gonna, discount that. I think the approach is, I think that Gantt chart kind of lays it out. Like, let's dig into this priority wise first, right? Which ones have the uptake? Because we are doing other things. I mean, CIP, right?
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of downside into digging into this, right? Like, because uptake's a big variable. We don't know for sure, other than e-bikes. We know it's going to be interest, but we don't really have a good sense yet of the uptake in some of these areas. So that's another piece of it. So our feeling is, and this is the direction we've been given, is because we kind of approached it like, If we spend all the money in 2 years, like, it's not easy to spend money at, in a space like this.
1.5 million is a big chunk.
Because this is new, but I think the direction was like, just be aggressive about it, learn from it, see what works.
Yeah.
The
See
worst
what does.
word can say is no.
Yeah, and then we'll reevaluate.
So one thing that might be helpful as you present this in its final form, just going back to the e-bikes and looking at that budget of 350 to 450,000, taking the middle of that and saying, this much money we expect to impact 200 households or whatever. Like, what does that equate to? What does $175,000 spent in this mean?
Yep, that's,
How many
What's
households?
the reach?
yep, yeah, and we have other sort of longer form working documents with that, what's
So that would funnel right into the way the metrics go. And
Right.
exact.
per house, we did this much reduction in greenhouse gas, this may scope 3 emissions
Somebody
reduction,
who's
whatever.
seeing this for the first time.
Yeah.
If you added in like number of households affected, that would, as somebody doesn't know anything
Our
about it,
targets.
Yeah.
be like, oh yeah, I relate to that,
Yeah, that's good feedback.
Be in the 4-minute warning.
Perfect timer.
Okay,
All right, and then plug in solar, and get into the for discounts again, prioritize. Well, and moderate and renters. And then I'll just be really brief on this for the ACCL program outreach, portal resource from CPO. We coordinated internally just to see what needs. And this was sort of what our friends and colleagues.
That's the Arlington Corporate Climate League.
That's right. So what we heard with our executive, this is even before ACCL was formed, but the executive leadership group said that they need help they actually need very specific sets of resources in order to implement parts of their sustainability plans. They don't have the staff to do it. So this is the resources essentially is the step before you would provide direct technical assistance. Now, we do have Series that's going to provide some of that help, but this funding will enable us with business identified needs. We're not just going to create something from whole cloth. So we already know that cooperative buying programs, but there are a variety of other potential needs, and we can direct those funds to create something for the greatest number of businesses that have identified that as a need, and that will be through surveys. So, this is incredibly scalable. It may cost us $100,000 to create an environmental purchasing program sort of set up like content or purchase that from somewhere. But if that's what gets businesses to take action, that's the idea.
and I just want to note that the Energy Committee has really supported the corporate climate leaders concept. Like, we see the vision and understand that this is leverage to something much larger than, a webpage online. So very supportive of including this in the portfolio.
I just have to say that the previous person in your spot would come up would talk about a program, but then wouldn't give any details and say it's all secret until we share it with the board. And it'd be like, we want to know more about it. And be like, nope, can't tell you anything about it. And you're being open and transparent and sharing your process and sharing your thoughts and talking to Rob. And I think that's so much better. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
And then this is just just recapping the summary and sort of bringing it home before the sort of next step slide. So again, it's really trying to have that aggressive approach for the $1.5 million remaining balance over the 2 years. As we talked about, majority of funds directed towards low and moderate income residents. The need for enhanced outreach and those methods are sort of means tested and are all baked into sort of program designs. Now and then as we sort of more sort of refine the programs going forward. We also want programs that target a variety of sectors. And so I think all of these are reflected on the portfolio approach, and then really, looking at external policies, market, program decisions, and sort of uptake, because these are very much community facing programs. So there is going to be that sort of dynamic and sort of back to that sort of approach where we have that sort of that portfolio with the ranges. So these are our next steps and sort of our pathway over the next couple months. And so, as I mentioned, if there's, feedback over the next week or so, please send that along, for consideration and sort of, for us to sort of,
The feedback that you've gotten at this meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely,
definitely.
absolutely, yep, we've been, yep. And then we're hoping to finalize the proposal and then present to the board in September. And then once it's approved, as you mentioned, integrate into the work plan, with all of the other ongoing items that their team in
Great. Great.
Do
Thank
you
you.
anticipate any hurdles with the board approval?
I think so. I mean, I don't know crystal ball about that, but I think this is pretty positive stuff. And I think this dialogue and engagement is constructive as well. I think there's general enthusiasm to go forth and try to make this work.
The letter from supporting the plan sent to the board matters, doesn't matter.
I think they're gonna want some
Yeah.
feedback.
it
on
matters.
They have to support specifically all the details of
Yeah.
what they're doing. And we could say, we like A, B, and C, and their plan is
Yeah.
A, B, C, D, E, and F.
We don't have questions. Okay. Yeah, we will have to do that and Rob will work on it. Okay. Well, thank you. That was, I think it's really exciting.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks for squeezing.
Thank y'all, yeah,
Thank you. And for all the.
yeah, the feedback and for sharing your opinions about it.
Conclusions are good. Thank you.
All right, so we have 3 things that we'd like to approve and maybe we should do these next. Well, we still have a semblance of a quorum. And one is to approve Jenna's June summary,
Yes.
which I will take a motion. I see Jenna accept the changes we put to approve. Anybody have any comments on the summary? Make a motion.
Second motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, and all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Thank you, Steve.
Yes, thank you very much. All right, so Lily, are you still driving? Because if you are, I'm good.
Unfortunately, yes. Unfortunately, yes, but I will try my best to be very fast. So if I lose my connection, you at least get the gist of
Okay.
what I presented, if that's okay, to
Right,
the
and you
commission.
circulated a wonderful letter that I thought was really good. You've got some comments online that said, Jenna's going through it now to see if anybody added edits, but go. So Lily, over to you.
Okay, guys, so very fast, we fought a good fight and we got at the policy level a commitment for emission reduction, for thinking about infrastructure for electromobility. But we didn't get our strategies to get that policy implemented in the plan, in the draft plan. And so the letter serves that purpose, which is to bring some teeth to the strategies that will be the pillars under which that policy will be implemented. And the 3 strategies that I included in the letter, I think they are pivotal to meeting that policy, to make it a reality. One of them is about embodied carbon. The entire plan does not mention embodied carbon at all. And in the letter, I explain why it is important to think about this. We are building roads, bridges, and that has embodied carbon, and that's what the share, the largest share in 20 or 30 years is going to be in carbon, and the hardest to reduce. The second thing is to bring up an equity lens to how the county thinks about building that infrastructure for electromobility, because in the places where that those slots are going to be available are in the less densely populated or less traffic, and that is precisely where you have people who own houses who can actually have a charger at home. We need to think about the people who lived in buildings that do not have access to these chargers, and that they need to charge basically at public spaces. So I think that is extremely important. And the third one is about having a goal. And the goal is to reduce carbon. So having not an indicator to measure emission reduction, but a benchmark, a measure. I think that is important for accountability. And so that's a proposal that I put in the letter. this is a draft letter, and I'm hoping you would, like I said in my email, read it with a critical eye and make edits as you see fit. But I'm hoping that we can rally behind this idea of bringing some implementation lens to our work on the transportation master plan, and I don't know, approve the letter in with the changes that you deem necessary. And with that, I close my I don't know, commentary. Thank you.
Questions for Lily?
These may or may not affect the outcome of this letter, but a little bit for my information. Because I'm not a transportation person. The right of way for EV, is there any way to benchmark successful programs on the spacing of that, the strategy for how that's mapped across the county? What kind of restrictions or limitations there would be for EV charging, so that just because I have an EV doesn't mean I get to park there all day? Like, is that buried in there somewhere, or assumed to be worked out in the details later in terms of policy?
I don't have the answer to that question, to be honest. I can look it up if you wish me to, but I'm not a transportation expert either, so I really don't know.
Where Lily has become, she took over from somebody and then somebody else took over. And then both of them are gone, and Lily has carried this ball beautifully.
Okay. Well, and thank you, Lily, for that. Just, I was thinking about it in terms of its ultimate implementation. Because I've seen examples where like one city block is just EV parking. But I've also seen like one out of every other block, is that. So there was mention in there about it being closer to the sort of those in need, essentially, that don't have off-street parking. But in terms of the other rules of engagement, like how long you get to be there, there's a lot of variation in that, and it can be well thought out, or it can be kind of a disaster. So I guess I'm just asking, is that?
I think we're not that, in the master planning, we're not that granular yet.
That's fine. Jen's got.
Yeah, Sorry. Yeah, so, right, so they have been, the staff have been very sort of consistent in sort of sharing that they are stopping short of implementation, which I think is some of the rub that I see in some of the comments.
Sure.
And so benchmarking, while I can't say uniformly that across the board we all do it, but we do it when working out the details of a policy, tend to benchmark to understand what's already been done, where it's sort of, so that
Sure.
Hopefully that helps answer your question. I was in transportation, but yeah, this very specific question is one that I imagine, and I know that AIR in particular has done a fair amount of research thus far, just in locating public space, charging spaces. So anyway,
that's worldwide, not just United States, but because there are better examples.
Understood.
Yeah. Okay, and the only other thing that I had a note about was, and this may again not apply to the scope of this, but can we make recommendations around streetscape modifications that include greenery that begins to address lowering heat island effect throughout the county as part of this?
I know, is that transportation? That would be great.
Yes. Can I address that? I think that the plan has a policy. I think it's policy N that talks about biophilia, and it talks about greening and using tree cover, and there are a series of strategies underneath it. So I will look at that, and then when I get home tomorrow, I'll look at that and try to reply to Kevin on that, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's great.
That sounds great.
There are great examples, again, European models, but great examples of how they are measuring an impact of multiple, sometimes double-digit degrees of reduction in heat island effect through tree-lined streets, etc. So the future planning for that and, you know, sidewalk renovations, whatever else comes into this. That should be something that we surface.
If I may, so we've shared similar thoughts from the staff's perspective, and in the draft, while there are obvious places like the sort of inclusion of biophilic elements in the right of way that certainly are going to help that, there's also in other recommendations, particularly around supporting pedestrian movement, and that the importance of the design of spaces not only need to be safe, but they need to be sort of welcoming and upright and sort of temperate in order
And to address on some level the comfort of pedestrians.
comfort, I think
Very
is actually the
encouraged.
word that they use.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so there's a couple of places where it's sort of sprinkled in, if you will. And I will say that the climate action plan, I would hope, would include some level of those recommendations as well, sort of speaking with existing county comprehensive plan elements, including the MTP. Yeah.
We get 2 bites at the apple, we get climate action plan bite.
Yep. Thank you.
Which
Thanks, Lily.
Yeah, so with that, any other questions? If not, I would move accept approval of Lily's letter. Second.
Yeah, yeah, that's fine. Second.
Excellent.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you
Aye.
so much. Please keep driving safely, and thank you guys for, David, do you have your hand up?
I did, but no worries. All I was going to do is ask a quick question, make a comment. The question was, Lily, how are you so awesome? And the comment was, wow, this is awesome.
Yay. Thank you. Glad you raised your hand for that. I'm gonna allow it as an ad lib. Okay, well, we still have like 45 minutes of agenda to get through in 30 minutes, so let's do it. So Kevin is not here. So the Air and Space Association letter, I had a question about it, which was that I put into the scorecard. So in our scorecard, we have a thing that says you meet if you have all electric cooking, except for the restaurants. And you exceed if you have all electric cooking, including the restaurants, which raises the question of what if you don't have restaurants?
Right.
And you have all electric cooking? And in this case, I was wondering if we wanted to go with exceeds. You can scroll down on the scorecard to the all electric cooking. I think I highlighted it or put the question in there. Because my question was, in this case, Kevin talked to them and they were going to do something totally different. They agreed to do induction cooking throughout the building after talking to Kevin. And so we were inclined to do exceeds for that.
That's awesome.
And so that would give them, yeah, that's my yellow highlight on the exceeds. I changed it.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, there's some other questions Kevin has in here.
So why does that 67% there, but a 77%?
It's because,
Just that part of it is,
yeah,
okay,
just that each section you get a.
gets its own. got-
And the letter was only 74, but when I changed this electric cooking to exceeds, which I highlighted because I wanted to ask you guys what you thought, it went up to 77. So we changed the letter. 77 is one of the highest scores we've ever.
The highest.
I was gonna say, I don't think I've ever seen anything above that.
Yeah, so I think we would go back and change the letter a little bit to make it even more positive. It says reasonably aligned, this project is reasonably aligned. These people met with Kevin over and over. They changed their plans based on what Kevin had to say. Maybe not over and over, but there's a lot of email and they did meet with him. Yes.
I'm a little confused though. Like, what if, so are we now saying that if you don't have restaurants and you do go all electric, you automatically exceed? Is that now kind of our new
Well, that's
baseline?
what we're discussing. Here, I was specifically giving them a reward because you can see they switched based on our pushing. So what do we do in the future? That's the exact question.
And I guess my hesitancy is what if I would actually be more impressed if they had done it without our pushing. So it feels like it diminishes those, like in one of the projects I did, they just did it by default. So it feels like it penalizes the good actors to reward folks who don't do it, who don't start with it.
And is
So I
this
think
fully
the question
electrifying the
is-
building completely? No gas anywhere, or just they went cooking? Like, do they have gas? It's not water.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a difference between like a project where like an old school electric cooktop would suffice because it is, you know, in that tier. But induction is like a high end upgrade from gas that if that were to take off commercially and be desirable in buildings as opposed to like the Wolf range would be absolutely huge for decarbonization. So I feel like including induction cooktops is what get to me what is like, so wow, this definitely deserves the exceeds.
Right.
Whereas all electric would be meats and all electric except for, you know, retail restaurants would be, you know, falling short. Get why they would do that, why they would, you know, balance it out. But the induction cooktops to me is still like a next level.
Yeah, that's sort of why, so I guess that's sort of what I was thinking. I guess but it's still a question. So if there was all electric cooking, but if there are no restaurants, I guess the question that we're really asking is what is our standard if there are no restaurants? And I think what we're saying is it's meats if there are no restaurants, but maybe we should add, but if it's all electric induction, it's a big deal. Anyway, I'm fine with going meets or exceeds, but I wanted to have something to talk about. I mean, I thought that was something to talk about. 74 is also a very good score.
So consensus,
Right.
you're asking for consensus on whether it should be meets or exceeds.
Right.
Do they, like, I see what you're saying, David, but like, if other applicants don't know that they were coerced, well, maybe I should use that word, suggested that they should switch to induction, like, persuaded, thanks, yeah. Maybe it still sort of accomplishes the same goal, because it's not like we're treating, you know, we're giving anybody like a, you know, an extra pat on the back. It's sort of praising the result, which, you know, I know that getting there is half the battle, but they got there. I don't know, maybe I don't know if that makes any sense.
Well, and I would say, I think I had understood and it sounds like misunderstood that the bump was because they did it as a result of Kevin's prodding. But if the bump is because it's induction and our base definition is just resistance electricity, that does change the argument to me. You know, I would, this a little bit opens up the question of, are we opening up the matrix to updates? Because I have at least a couple that I'd love to talk about there, but I would say induction is without a doubt, as Elizabeth said, so much better than resistance. I mean, resistance is bad and often worse than gas. It just accesses renewables in a way that gas doesn't.
David, I would also say, and maybe I'm misunderstanding your earlier point, but I think the score isn't because they made the change as a result of Kevin's advocacy. I think they're two separate issues. One is, wow, they went to induction cooking, and a separate issue is, wow, they listened to us.
Right. Both of which are good. I just wouldn't up their score because they listened to us. I would up their score because of the technology change.
They adopted induction.
I agree, we're trying to be consistent, so I think that going forward, we should be thinking about induction. I haven't seen induction on any other project. But let's scroll up a little on the scorecard, because I think Kevin. Oh, sorry, Doug.
My comment has to do with the letter.
Okay, but let's scroll up on the scorecard and see. I think Kevin has a few questions in here. They did not provide any information. Let's scroll down. Switch to induction on my recommendation. We did not discuss battery storage. I think maybe, okay, Doug.
So it just in the letter, and I agree with Elizabeth that induction cooktops are, you know, great, and we need to highlight that for the county board in our letter. And I don't see in the letter that he specifically mentions induction cooktops. I don't know if they've committed to induction cooktops or just say we're considering induction cooktops, but if they've committed, then we should use the phrase induction cooktops in our letter.
Okay.
So the board.
Okay, let's scroll down and see where it's.
Get that concept in front of the board.
That ties into one of
Is
my,
that carbon?
what about the temp?
Is it energy efficiency? Is it electrification?
Just that one, yeah.
It's
Yeah, for cooking, yeah.
good, and for cooking, it's notable that they have switched to induction cooking, which is
It'd probably go after the first sentence.
Yeah,
Mr. Chosen.
looking at right there. It is notable,
Chosen is probably better.
it's notable that
They have committed
they
to.
committed to the,
And we should confirm with Kevin that they have in fact
Yeah.
given it writing and that they offered their first points of collateral.
Induction put that far superior energy perspective. Far superior from an
Energy efficiency perspective.
energy. Yeah. Okay. And it could drop it down, I think. But he does, in his comments, he seems to think. Yeah, okay, just
You can get it
note to
right.
double check.
So that was the other
Yeah.
odd question that I had, which was, that's one separate thing about the cooktops. Does that mean that they are now fully electrified on site, including
If we go back to. the-
generators and any, or anything else?
Yes.
Or,
That's usually like
That's
the last mile of electrification.
Right.
It did say something like they were,
Wanna-
we go back to the scorecard. you should be like- Wait, go up a little bit to that. next
utilities
comment.
electrification.
Next yellow comment. Up there. Oh. Down. We did not discuss battery storage or their plans for emergency backup. Nothing in their proposal indicates they'll have,
But do they have backup power?
right, so-
And if so, what is it?
right, exactly, don't we?
Clarification.
It says there's nothing to indicate they will even have emergency backup.
Right. So if
But
there
if they
isn't any,
did, But.
then
there's-
fine, then they
But if there
potentially
isn't,
are fully
problem.
electrified.
But if it isn't, they probably have one.
Yes.
I thought I saw something in the letter right after that. The next sentence of the letter, I thought said something about backup. Possible. It's right there. For example.
I think it's a.
Sorry,
repeat
Jen,
of
I'm back.
battery
Like the
part.
applicant includes, oh, if they include, rather than possible. Okay.
Right, so we don't.
So we don't know, right?
Any other, so,
Yeah, there was a question at the top, I think, about the lead. They explained that that they meet this metric, but that lead 4.1 is inapplicable to the project. So are they going for lead gold on this? Or are they going for a similar threshold to lead, but not actually applying?
Oh, it looks like they just only have 1 meter for the entire building.
So no sub-metering, right?
we
And,
scroll,
and this is something that this was part of what I was referring to in my question about commercial buildings, because we've had almost every developer I've seen in the last few months has said this same thing, that our minimum criteria does not apply to them. And so they're using LEED 4 multifamily mid-rise gold instead. And I am not an expert in those to understand what the difference is and why 4.1 doesn't apply to them. But this keeps coming up, and I do think we need to get a handle on what it means.
But I guess I'm still not clear. Are they actually pursuing a LEED certification or just saying they're going to hit thresholds like that?
Sounds like the equivalent.
Okay.
equivalent of lead gold, not
Okay.
platinum.
With that, so we don't know what the documentation is or the process. So there, I might say doesn't meet. It falls short, not,
Let's
Right.
scroll down because Kevin has something in one of these things. I don't know, should we include all this detail in what we sent to the county? I think some of this is fine. There's one place where he says, I just don't know enough about hash rate. That's great, yeah,
no portfolio.
there, I think this might be exceeds, but I don't really understand how underscoring works. And I don't
It's
either.
based on other build, like similar builds, right?
So that's why they're saying you have to wait till you've been operating for a while.
Sure, but
I don't think we should send to the board with a note that says, I just don't understand how this works.
yeah. True. And also then, if we're not clear how they're getting there, does it meet our expectations?
Right, and he says that he's giving them beats, but their argument is they're gonna hit exceeds, but he's not giving that to them because he doesn't No,
They're not, so they've done no calculations that tells them their energy use intensity will beat that score.
Yeah,
so Jen,
I would
you
want
can
to
highlight
see
that.
documentation
Right.
to provide
I
a
think
seed score.
Yeah. They should, the designer should be able to calculation that gets them in the ballpark and tells them whether they're going to hit 60 or 80 on that score. Obviously, they do have to go through a year of occupancy and get data for it, but
I do not understand the lead and Energy Star rating systems. I understand that which was fine. Yeah, so we'll go through it. I'll go through that. I don't know when.
I think that category probably makes more sense for a building that has multiple tenants. And I wouldn't be surprised if this building has just one tenant, the association, but
Right.
sure.
Fall down a little bit more, Jen. Let's just, yeah.
so this is a commercial, not residential. This is
Yeah.
a commercial office,
Okay.
I think that's right.
right? And maybe a single tenant.
I think,
Okay.
yeah, so we wouldn't have sub meters that are capable of.
And he really likes
sending.
But they.
go down to the dark sky.
Fine.
The dark, now
But
go
it
back
looks
up
like
to the dark sky.
That is to have
The,
the
next one.
tenant
Yeah.
energy
Actually, light pollution reduction.
to be able to say.
Okay.
Department.
So, Kevin gave them exceeds on this light pollution reduction because they are doing a lot of dark sky stuff, but they are having some security lighting because there was a horrible murder and the community has asked, and the body was dumped on the stairs of this building.
So the question is whether it's 95% of it or not, like,
He
what is that?
decided that it was good enough. So, anyway, just pointing that out, he thought that if they were getting dark, the lighting will be dark sky approved, except for right at the ground floor, right around the building where they really had security concerns for that reason.
Doesn't that really get covered in the meets? Then the 90%, except for emergency or as required by code, but that might also be a security. We all,
This is their existing building, right?
So I know that we're talking about, I did think this was an interesting, project, and I mean, if we don't want them to get a 77, we could knock them on that, but
I don't know it's about wanting them to get anywhere. I'm just trying to clarify, like,
what is our actual?
what's our, where's our threshold of acceptance for meets and
Right.
or exceeds? And that says 95% of the fixtures. If they're only at 80% of the fixtures because of this security concern at grade level, that's a very reasonable reason for it not to be, but then it doesn't exceed our.
Yeah, and I don't know. I just know that Kevin felt that they had done everything they reasonably could and
Yeah.
more. That's why he gave them an exceeds. I didn't, unlike the other one, I didn't interfere with this one. That was his, judgment.
I think it's just a question of, are we setting a precedent for
Yeah.
latitude on feels good? They tried versus they actually hit the goal. So
I do like instantly feel sympathetic since we led with the induction cooking. It's biasing me slightly.
sure.
It's sympathetic to, I mean, I think they're trying to be very responsible. in the way he says
That's
the
clear, especially
community has
compared to what
requested.
we've seen from
Right.
past applicants.
So how about I move approval of the letter and scorecard with the 77%? And Jen and I will check with Kevin, we'll pick it up, we'll take out some of the things that Kevin intended us to see, but not the board to see. I think Kevin will be around. He's not on vacation, he just wasn't available tonight. I will be traveling, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I
Last
just,
time we saw 77%.
I don't
Never
remember
had.
ever seeing it. The highest I remember seeing is 74, but that was from Joan. When Joan gives somebody a 74, it's a
Yeah, you-
seriously good 74.
as long as there's nothing that's gonna be like, if someone's looking
That's
To
something where
test
we're doing
us.
this exact same
that we,
thing.
that we are consistent and that
We are trying to be consistent, but
that-
there is definitely a subjective
Sure.
thing in these discussions, there just is. You know, we've tried hard to make it even more.
Yeah, on the one I just did, I felt that the team was very forthcoming
Yeah.
and transparent in what they were doing. But that just made me feel good that they were actually engaged in the project process, not that they were reading
Better.
beyond their,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, I think we're not really giving him, I think we're not
Okay.
really giving them scores for playing nice with us.
Okay, then that's fine with me.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. So we will work to finalize that letter with that discussion. Zooming. So Henry, I'm sorry, but
That's okay.
SPRCs are still,
Yeah.
so the template language, can we pull it? So did anybody have a chance to look at this? You know, you don't have to.
Couldn't edit it, but I looked.
Yeah, I did exactly what I always do, but you guys couldn't get access to my stuff, which is why Jenna resent it this morning. Got all these share requests.
Boy, Kate,
but
I did
basically I
it from the
picked up-
link that where she summarized all of it.
And you still couldn't edit?
I still had to request it. And I was like, well, that's
Weird.
too late. I was doing it at 6:30 tonight.
SPRC template?
It's the template letter yeah, it's probably that one. So one of my questions was going to Doug's question, what is the font? This is in Century Gothic, which is the county's official font. I think it's really ugly personally, but if we want to use it, if we're going to be completely, and are we going to call them the applicant? I guess they're not always the developer. Sometimes they're for the applicant. But anyway, you get the general idea. I picked up Scott's language. We talked about this a lot last month. Picked up Scott's language about the 67% for context there. And then I put in some of the language I've seen that's very popular. But people are, you know, this is never going to be cookie cutter. People are still obviously going to. And then I put in Scott's proposed language near the end. Go all the way to the bottom. I don't know that anybody else has comments. I looked.
What was the summary? Yeah.
Yeah, the summary part that says, while some of these strategies are currently under consideration, not guaranteed, we should expect developers to be clear on how their project advances the county climate and energy goals. And we should continue to strengthen the project-specific site condition process, not the overall site condition process. Ensure that commitments made by developers are well documented, staff can ensure they are met, because that is an issue.
Yeah.
Right, so we added that. That was Scott's language. We added it to all the letters we did last month. And so I put it in this template letter. Otherwise, and I've just got various options for, you know, and we're still going to review each letter as it comes. So even if you, I mean, I don't think we need to vote on this template letter, but it's just an opportunity for people to comment on it, and hopefully we'll have a process, make it easier.
One suggestion, if you would scroll up just a little bit to the all the subject of this subheadings and categories, right? It might be worth adding a sort of miscellaneous category for capturing things that are not specifically in our checklist, but maybe in a specific sustainability feature.
Let's call it something other than miscellaneous, so which
Yeah.
like other
Miscellaneous
sustainability.
sustainability strategies that don't fit into our checklist.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Or additional sustainability.
yeah,
Miscellaneous just
yeah,
sounds
sorry,
so much like I can ignore you.
right.
Okay. All right.
Just,
So,
yeah, for anything, and just, I would say in the template, for anything that isn't
Yeah.
captured directly in the scorecard.
okay. Any other questions, comments on that? Anything from people on the phone?
I haven't had a chance to review this closely, but I have been thinking about how we are delivering overall messages to the board. I love the amount of detail we have, but at the same time, I would really like a very clear message.
Like in the top.
Yeah, so in the top paragraph where we say this project like falls slightly short, I would love to suggest or have the commission's approval to suggest some much stronger language. So at least the project falls well short, or, falls short, but like is, kind of on the bubble, but I'd love to also have a category for like exemplary, like,
Okay.
a
Project's getting.
yes, so that there
It's
is
well aligned with, it's not strong enough.
not strong enough for me and falls short. If it's something that falls short of somewhat, and we would recommend a no, I would love to have language that's stronger than it
Yes.
falls short. Like this is gonna be,
We do not recommend.
These were, yeah, if we're gonna say reject.
Rejection.
yeah,
That's just gotta.
We said that somewhere.
or like,
Like,
yeah.
I would suggest that take a stab at what you think is
Yeah.
good, throw it out for.
Yeah, I mean, if
Does
we
make
want,
sense.
if we want, 4 categories, that's fine. And I think it makes sense to have like a strong no, a like, well, this falls short, but they're trying, like this is aligned, like, but if something's reasonably aligned with, and it like made our,
Hit our threshold.
like, we should be celebrating that a little bit more.
It's fine. Exemplary.
And like exemplary is the language that I would use sparingly, but for a project that like it's clearly a goal of this project to demonstrate sustainability.
Go down to the next.
So it's down to 77%.
Yeah,
Maybe
so
I would think 75.
So that's where it says, a score above indicates project that's making carbon neutrality a core design principle and helping to lead the way for other developers. That's more strong language.
Yeah.
But we can put it in the top too. I thought
I
there was
would-
about rejecting it, what is the score which we're gonna reject?
Yeah, so we have context that's right at our threshold, which is 67%, which does seem arbitrary.
David, were you gonna say something?
I think it's related to all this. Two things. One, I do think internally and maybe even externally, it would behoove us to have a simple table that indicates what scores and or what other factors might go into putting something in these 4. It can't be perfectly black and white, but I would just say, as like in the project I rated and worked on, I think it got a 55%, and I didn't know enough. I was just like, well, it's that, kind of meets the bare minimum. But so it would be good, I think, to have a table with some explicit ranges, and if there are caveats. I would also say, I think I liked the concept of this sentence of a score above 67% indicates, but I feel like it was too much of a jump where 67 meets, but then it kind of, I think, unintentionally indicates that anything above 67, it's a core design principle. And to me, it would be a little more continuous, like the further above 67% indicates that it is more and more or increasingly taking carbon neutrality as a core design principle.
Got that too, but I like the way that you're capturing it, that 68 is not.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything true to magic.
Like the further above the 60, so where it says is the further above the 67% threshold.
Instead of a score,
We'll fix
say
it.
the
We'll fix
further
it
above.
later. Okay, guys, we got 6 minutes. So we'll keep, this is obviously a work in progress. We'll just keep changing it. So, and hopefully making it better.
And I would just put increasingly in front of making there, just to connect the sentence.
Increasingly making carbon neutrality. Okay. And then the other question that Scott had raised, that we didn't have time to talk about last month is, should C2E2 take on some of this responsibility for following up on these projects after the SPRC? Should we be reviewing final plan approval? Should we be looking at this project specific? Should we check the project to see if it lived up? And that would help us hold staff accountable and help us hold the developer accountable and help us figure out why the projects don't always achieve what they think they're going to. So that was a great
I think
question.
that would
but
create a
it's-
feedback loop for us that might help us adjust the scoring over time, if that's important.
Right, it's just a lot of,
It does mean that now I'm gonna have to follow 1401 Wilson.
right.
For
And
this.
you actually have the expertise to do that.
Yeah.
I definitely do not.
I feel like that would be pretty burdensome for me as a volunteer
Sure.
without expertise in this area.
And I would still be relying on partnering with staff to understand that, right? If they are already tracking this on some level, great. But as I went through this process, I kind of realized that what the developer says today to get it through
Right.
site plan and what they actually deliver when the design is complete, they submit for actual permit and not just initial approval, it changed an awful lot. I've seen it happen in my career every day. So getting us to that point of saying, okay, you lulled us into thinking you were going to do these things, so we recommended yes, and then you turn around and dropped everything.
I mean, it's a really important issue, and that's why we've added this language saying, staff, we really want you to hold them accountable. Which might be,
Respect, I don't necessarily have a lot of comments. The staff is doing that. If, I know it's a lot of burden, extra burden on us, but if we could catch even one significant deviation, that would enhance the credibility and the stature of our commission.
Sure.
Quite a bit.
I don't disagree that it should be done.
yeah, I just don't have the capability.
I know
Fortunately, you guys all do it.
We-
Hard enough to-
Well,
Every-
so on
we have
one
to do
level,
everyone
I
should
think
do
you
one.
maybe are selling yourself short because you have
I nagged a
have-
lot
we
already.
have established where those key areas are that we're looking to make sure they live up to. It's not that hard to find out, did the design deliver that? Did the finished product change something?
I wonder too if there's just a few that we could flag for audit, maybe, like
Yeah,
if we sense as we're going through, like,
Yeah.
you know, these,
Guys,
you know, we've
look great.
heard this, we don't have the commitments here, like, let's follow up on this one.
Or maybe even as part of whatever the final submission process is, like a executive summary sheet for us. Like put the work on them to do it. Like just call it out in your final, whatever it is. If it's like I don't know what the language is, but it's a final package that goes and says, okay, after all of our review, this is our final, what we've settled on. Sorry, C2E2, we've ripped out our induction stoves and we're putting in firewood, basically. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing, if they could put the burden back on the applicant,
Interesting idea.
just so that we can say, yeah, quick eye check on it. Here's, what we said in our initial letter. Here's our checklist if we want to refer to that, but they have it nice and called out in front.
I think this is incredibly powerful for two reasons. One, I'll be honest, the two other thoughts I have about this letter or what you're talking about are, one, I find it incredibly challenging. Even in Kevin's letter, you saw that where they're like, well, we promise we'll do this, we promise we'll do that, but it's not in writing, which means the public can't hold them accountable. And it's really hard to know what ends up happening. So I do love the concept of them having to create basically a promise sheet or a spec sheet tied to our matrix potentially that is like, we are going to do A, B, and C. And then later on where they come back and tell us whether they did A, B, and C. It closes that loop. It makes it incredibly transparent. And I think it also addresses the other frustrating challenge, which I considered raising for this letter, is the question of how well did they even interact with us? Because that seems like a constant challenge for these. And I don't think we should have to chase them. I think that actually sends the wrong message. It puts them in power rather than us and the board.
I like Joe's message too, right? Some of these huge projects. So, and I like what you're saying, Henry, that getting them to do more work. We haven't had that kind of power in the past, but now we are.
Maybe not
we
even
are
more
being-
work, just, hey, put whatever
Yeah.
you've said, it should be a couple
But that's what
sentences
should
that
be
sound
in-
verifiable.
That's what should be in these project-specific site conditions. That's what they put in writing. That's what they sign off on. And we should know at that point.
And we share the checklist with them as part of the process, right? So they have that information going into it, and then we do the consultation, and then we write the letter, and then they can refer to it back on their own as they need to. So they'll know what we're looking for, and they know when they've not.
So as far as the retreat goes, I think.
Yeah, we can table
We're
that.
not gonna be able, but I think we were talking about doing it like in January or
Sure.
December as a work plan
Bring some more.
to think about the year. think about the year ahead and do some kind of planning. So that would let us, so there's no August meeting, which means that the September meeting will be absolutely packed, especially because the low residential study people have asked for about half of that meeting. And I don't know that we're gonna be able to do that, but
They asked for half of our September C2E2 agenda to be devoted to their
yes,
issue.
but I'm not necessarily going to say yes to that, but it's a big, big issue and it's very controversial, so I get that.
How
Maybe
many
a third.
people are they gonna have like people come to
I don't
talk?
I think it would just be one or two, but yeah, I think they said, they can scale down from 45 minutes, but maybe.
So I
questions.
I will be honest, I continue to believe this is a proxy for feelings about homes getting larger in Arlington.
Uh-huh.
It's not really the
Review of this committee.
purview of this commission. Like, I get why they're approaching us on the lot size, but I feel like the impervious surfaces is the correct measure to review here and not home footprint size. And we've got many other, sort of ways that we're addressing tree canopy. So I would not be in favor of devoting quite that much commission time when we can't even get to our
retreat
own agenda for our retreat, which is how we're gonna get ahead of some of our.
And have they spoken to the Natural Resource Commission about that?
I think.
That might be a good. Good
Yeah, I think
lot.
they are. Yeah, I think, when first I heard of it was before Jenna contacted me. I saw a note from somebody who said, oh, they said they're presenting to you guys in September. It's like, oh, that's interesting. But
This stuff is tied to stormwater management still, right? Because
yes, that
across
was
the
the
street from me,
Jenna's.
house burned down. They built it back larger. And I mean, but it's in a historic neighborhood, so it took them 3 years to get approval. But they had, because the footprint was larger, the roof was larger, they have 3 gigantic rain barrels catching and slowing down runoff.
Yeah.
That was a requirement. So there are ways that those things can be better synthesized and still meet higher thresholds for stormwater management.
So more to come on that. But anyway, so what I was really trying to say, although that was very, very interesting, is that the September meeting, because we have no August meeting, historically, that means the September meeting is the same. So maybe more talk about the retreat in October. I'm just trying not to over.
No, that's.
I want to mention about Jen hung out here amazingly that there was a final issue on the gas powered fleet blowers phase out on January 1st, 2029 in Arlington, which is 29 months, 36 up from 18. I think that's good. I think Elizabeth and I will skip the energy committee update and the advisory group update. We should also speak to any other questions? Comments. And it's very nice of you even to have hung out here for this, and Jen too, and people on the phone. All the drivers and travelers, we appreciate you giving us a quorum. It's really important to be able to say we had a quorum even if they weren't all in the room. So thank you, Rich. And so, anything else for the good of the order? I would just say one thing that goes to what you were saying earlier, Doug, about the low and moderate income and who is really doing it. And that is when a few years ago when I was approached and really pressured to work on the walking school bus, which was piloted in my neighborhood where, neighborhood adults walk kids to school to get them out of the cars. And I said, okay, I'll do it, but I want to walk from this, affordable housing development behind the school, who are hotel maids who have to leave at 7 a.m. Those are the kids I want to walk to school. And that's what I want to do. And the person said, honey, those kids are already walking to school. You got to walk rich kids to school. And, that is.
Oh, that's important.
Yeah, I think there's a different portfolio of incentives that behavior that should be explored, but
anyway, all right. Well, thank you all.
Thank you.
That's a lot of good discussion. And that's one nice thing about having fewer people.